Greetings, developers, hackathon participants, and metaverse architects. We are here for the fourth workshop of the Chronos or Moralis Cross Chronos Metaverse Gaming Hackathon. My name's Phil, head of events, and I'm here with Ken of Cronos today to go over some additional tips and ideas to help you in developing your projects for this exciting hackathon event. I'm going to welcome Ken here to the stage. Hello, Ken. How are you doing today?
Hi, Phil. Yeah, hi. Hi, Phil. Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Thank you. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand the stage over to Ken so he can get started with his workshop here today.
Wonderful. So you should all now be able to see my screen. So by way of introduction, so my name is Ken Timsit. So my Twitter handle is at the bottom of the screen. And this fourth workshop is about how to win. Because we, as a team on the Cronos side, we have now been judges, sponsors, mentors in multiple blockchain hackathons. I think we have learned a lot of things when it comes to what are the common traits of winners, what they do well, what are the things to avoid. And so I'd like to share that with you today so that you are as prepared as possible. And as you choose the project that you're going to work on between now and the end of the hackathon, you have all the tools at your disposal to excel. All right, so as a quick reminder, I just have 2 slides to present Chronos Chain for those who are not already familiar with it, but it's going to be very quick. So as a reminder, so Cronos is the first EVM compatible chain built on the Cosmos SDK. From the standpoint of users and developers, it is an Ethereum compatible chain, an EVM chain, right? So there's no difference between creating smart contracts and dApps on Cronos versus Ethereum, Polygon, BNB chain, etc. The way that we differentiate as a chain is, first of all, because Crypto.com is an important contributor to Cronos as an open source project. They are involved in the technical direction of the project, and as a result, for them, with a certain degree of confidence about the technology of the technology direction of the project, it's easier for them to integrate Cronos and to steer their exchange users towards the applications on Cronos. So as a developer on Cronos, you have access to that addressable user base of 50 million crypto users around the world, which is great when you're thinking about preparing for the next big wave of Web3 adoption. And the second way that we differentiate is by, like I said before, being built on top of the Cosmos SDK, which even though it doesn't change the way that you build applications, it means that we have trustless bridges to the other Cosmos chains. It's easy to bring tokens back and forth. And also, as a Cosmos chain, we're fast, cheap, eco-friendly, soon carbon neutral. And so we know that transaction speed, transaction cost, energy consumption have always been big blockers when it comes to mainstream Web3 adoption. And so with Cronos, we are addressing those blockers and removing them for you. And so, if you're, as a result, if you're asking yourself, why should I build on Cronos? You should build on Cronos because of the access to CrowFam, which is the hashtag that we use to designate all the users of Cronos, crypto.org, crypto.com. So that's Crow family. The second reason you should target Cronos is that it's a chain where those users have huge appetite for more DeFi and gaming applications. In fact, relative to Polygon or BNB chain, I think Cronos is still a young chain where you have lots of users, but not that many high quality applications. We probably have only 300 apps. So for you, if you believe in your project, it's a great place to have visibility and be more visible to users and have access to more users in an environment that is comparatively less crowded. Number three, we're leveraging the best from Ethereum and from Cosmos ecosystems. We're not trying to invent our own technology from scratch, from a blank sheet of paper. So the technology is robust and can be relied upon. Number four, because of that partnership with the crypto exchange, there's a lot of liquidity present on Cronos in all kinds of cryptocurrencies. Most of the world's top 50 cryptocurrencies have a wrapped version that exists on Cronos. And finally, Cronos Labs, which is the entity and the team which supports you as a developer. If you want to grow on Cronos, we have grant programs, ecosystem programs, marketing support, technical support, and all kinds of things that we hope are making the development experience enjoyable on Cronos. And certainly we try to make sure that as you participate in this hackathon, you can experience that through the support that we offer in the Discord channel. So let's now move to the agenda of this call, hackathon tips. So there are 5 golden rules that I'd like to share with you. Of course, throughout this workshop, I'm going to take each of them in turn and explain a bit more what I mean by that. So those 5 golden rules are, first, tackle a crypto or Web3 native opportunity. What I mean by that is, don't try to integrate yourself too much with the traditional world. Number 2, you need to be smart about what you put on chain and what you put off chain. Blockchain is not good for everything. It's just one piece of your stack, and you need to understand what it's good for. Number 3, and particularly in the context of Web3 gaming and Metaverse, it's important to have token models, what we call tokenomics, that are easy to understand and explain in plain English. The time of magic money and value that is created out of nowhere, I think that time has somewhat passed, at least in the eyes of many investors. And so if you're planning for your project to raise funds and be successful after the hackathon, it's important to think about the sustainability, the economic sustainability of your project, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Tip number 4, pay attention to design. So by that we mean user interfaces, user experience, and hopefully having a designer on your team. And finally, tip number 5, plan your presentation like a show. What we mean by that is that your deliverable is not just the repository, it's also the pitch. And so you want to make sure that you're going to keep the hackathon judges engaged throughout your pitch. And so I will share a few pieces of advice in terms of how to achieve that. So tip number 1, I said it's about taking a crypto/Web3 native problem or opportunity. And so really what I mean by that is that nowadays, if you want to build a Web3 game or Metaverse application or DeFi application, it's all about adoption. It's about all about your ability to demonstrate that you can acquire users and scale very, very fast. And if you're trying to integrate with the traditional world, whether it's the banking system or I don't know, like horse races or any other kind of real life application that you're trying to connect to your project, it's just going to be really hard and create a lot of friction because the traditional world is not designed to interface well with the world of Web3. And when you look at the big winners in the crypto ecosystem so far, whether it's Aave, Uniswap, even Axie Infinity, those are all applications who have sort of established their success first in a purely digital world with users who were already on the blockchain and were where the only thing that they had to establish was that for those users that were already on the blockchain, they were able to solve real problems or create real yield opportunities. And so, the advice in the context of a hackathon is really that the judges shouldn't need to assume that you're going to close, brand partnerships or traditional partnerships in order for your app to be successful. The judges want to believe that your app is going to be successful from day one, just based on the value that you provide to users. And so a lot of it is about not depending on integrations and partnerships with the non-crypto world. Of course, we all hope that one day soon, crypto will permeate every aspect of our economic and personal lives, but we're not there yet. So in the context of a hackathon, try to focus on Web3 users and Web3 problems. Second tip, don't put everything on chain. So the blockchain is not good for everything. And in particular, when you're looking at a Web3 game, there are many aspects of the game that you shouldn't put on chain if you want to make sure that the user experience is going to be fluid with low latency. So at the core, the blockchain is great as a technology to store and transfer digital value. So that means that you should put on chain digital objects that users will want to store and trade outside of the game, such as NFTs, game currency that is meant to be withdrawn and traded into other currencies, and also potentially, if you have one, any token that represents ownership of governance of the game protocol, and that allows early adopters to participate in the governance or value sharing of your project. By contrast, some things are probably best left off-chain, such as most of the game actions, most of the gameplay, any in-game skills and currency that is not meant to be withdrawn and exported and traded outside of the game. And as a rule of thumb, what I've heard from many game developers is, try to design your game in such a way that users don't need to interact with the blockchain during the first 2 weeks. During the first 2 weeks, your priority is to provide them with an entertaining experience that does not require Web3. And after 2 weeks, once they're hooked and they've understood how the game works, you can enhance the experience by adding some Web3 features to it. But so, don't rush and put everything on chain. That's the main learning from other hackathons. Be sensible and practical about what you put on chain and off chain. Number 3, and so that section is probably the longest section in the workshop because the question of tokenomics and token models in gaming is currently one of the hardest questions for Web3 developers. And of course, right now, what we're doing is we're doing a game hackathon. So it's really important to be to think deeply about the token model and or the token models that your game is going to implement. So the first statement that I'm going to make is the obvious one. Right? There was a time when you could build a token model around your game that was predicated on the assumption that your game has a currency. That currency is increasing in value like the rest of the market. And therefore, the incentive for users to adopt your game is that whatever digital value they acquire from your game, that will grow in value and they will make money from your game. I think that paradigm has somewhat disappeared, partly because markets are down, but also, I think more importantly, because more critics and analysts have now started to question the sustainability of games that rely on newer players buying out older players. And therefore, we need to think more fundamentally about how the game is creating value and distributing that value to the users. So there's a few things that we have learned about things not to do as part of your game, and probably some ideas about what you should focus on. So one thing that we've learned so far is that it's really hard in the current market conditions to make your game successful if it's a pay-to-play game. Pay-to-play games are comparatively easier if, again, whatever you're buying is sure to increase in value. It is not the case today. And so I think right now we're probably at a stage where your game needs to be free to play with the ability for users to buy stuff later on if they want to enhance the game experience. Second aspect or your game design principle that I think you should avoid is you should not create the expectation that every player will make money. So in that sense, the play to earn game model where everyone just spends time on the game and is going to derive a financial benefit from it, I think that's somewhat over. And also probably that's not the kind of game loop that is going to get the judges excited about your project, because unless you have a magic formula to create money out of thin air, it's not very innovative and not very sustainable. Number three, you're also going to be faced with a fair amount of doubt and skepticism from the judges if you're introducing a payment token within your game whose only role is for users to use it to pay for stuff and buy stuff in your game. So I think the idea of a game having a payment token has been commonplace in recent months. The idea is that your game creates a payment token, and just because people need to buy it in order to purchase stuff in the game, that payment token will have demand and is likely to increase in value. The reality is that, first of all, you're introducing more friction in the game than if people were able to buy from any cryptocurrency. And secondly, you're creating a means of payment which is not stable in nature. So meaning that as the game progresses and the payment token increases in value, the things that people buy in your game, like rent for a piece of land or equipment, those things are going to increase in value, which is not fair and not enjoyable for game users. So it's much better in most situations to allow users to use any cryptocurrency, and in particular stable coins, in order to purchase stuff in your game and to focus the use of blockchain on other aspects of the game economics. And of course, I think it's important in the context of a hackathon to be innovative, not to try and create a concept that hundreds of people or thousands of people have worked on before, like Web3 poker game. We've seen hundreds of those. And it's important to present a concept that is economically sustainable. So we're going to talk about exactly what that means. First of all, when you create a game and you're making use of Web3, you need to be very clear why people are going to pay and get cash into the treasury of your game. As I said earlier, it's going to be less and less frequent that users are simply paying for stuff in your game to make a profit, because the stuff that they're going to buy in itself may not generate financial return. And therefore, at a more fundamental level, users are likely to pay if it's a way for them to win, to save time, or to have more fun and socialization opportunities with other users in the context of multiplayer games. And so you need to be very clear about your monetization model and to what extent people are buying for cosmetic enhancements, they're buying to skip progression levels in your game, they're paying simply to have access to more exclusive areas within your game that are reserved for passionate gamers, or they're paying to have access to early features, right? But having that clear view and explaining that view to the judges of the hackathon is going to be extremely critical. And then there's the second question, which is, in return, whatever money comes into your game, how is it getting out? In other words, which users are going to be able to earn from your game, and in what context? And I think it's really important here also to understand that not everyone will earn, right? It can't be just play to earn for everyone. Your game model will truly be innovative if it implements ways to earn that are attached to some merit, right? So users earn if they deserve to earn. And so that can take several forms. First of all, you can have trade to earn. So the idea behind trade to earn is that as you progress in the game through time, sweat, and skills, you may have acquired certain assets that you may want to resell to other gamers if you're tired with the game or want to move on. Trade to earn should not be applied to everything, right? There should still be assets, achievements, and levels in the game that you can only achieve through skill, sweat, and experience. However, there can be some passes or some cosmetic pieces of equipment that could enhance the game monetization if they become tradable. And so those are really the types of assets that you should allow gamers to trade. And of course, when they trade, they're making money from having sold their assets to another gamer. You're making some money as well because you're usually taking a royalty cut out of that transaction. And so everyone is happy. So trade to earn means, as a user, I'm selling some game asset to someone else and making money from that. Perform to earn, so that's the second concept. So that's really about tournaments. In the traditional gaming world, we have esports and gaming tournaments. Those are fairly logistically heavy events to organize, oftentimes in real life. And what Web3 creates is an opportunity to organize tournaments at any level, big, small, local, where the whole mechanics of collecting tournament fees and redistributing them to winners is extremely agile and guaranteed to always be accurate thanks to the smart contracts redistributing the money. And so in a word, what we're talking about here is casual esports, meaning that anyone can participate in a tournament or competition, even if they're not a professional esports player, because you're able to organize tournaments at a much more granular and agile scale as in traditional gaming. So that's what we call perform to earn. you earn if you win a tournament or some kind of tournament. Number 3, so create to earn. This we're all used to from Roblox, for example. So this is about user-generated content. As a user, it's possible that you will be creating pieces of furniture, or that you will be engaging in some form of economic activity within the game universe that you're charging other users for. And so that's another way to earn that rewards creators and people who contribute with content to the game universe. And number 4, so that's the most innovative part of what Web3 brings to the game: own to earn. And so what this means is that oftentimes, if you're the early adopter or the early supporter of a game, you will, through some mechanism, collect protocol tokens. So those are the tokens that symbolize ownership or partial ownership of the game, or some rights, proof that you have been an early adopter. And so in exchange for that, you will get benefits over time. You could get early access to some features. You could get access to some exclusive items. You can get even sometimes some share of the revenue generated by the game if you have staked your tokens at, in some form of the game. And so it is very much akin to being a private investor in the game by virtue of having been an early adopter. It's a little bit like crowdfunding when you're buying a pair, a custom a travel bag on a website and having it before everyone else. And of course, it's very much part and parcel of the Web3 culture, where the idea is that the people building the network, contributing to the value of the network, also are able to collect the value that they're creating, as opposed to game developers and publishers capturing 100% of the value. So in summary, on the topic of tokenomics, as Hackathon judges, what we will want to see is an explanation that is as simple as possible and really in plain English of the economics of the game and how the token works. And what this means is that, first of all, we want to really understand the game loop. Mostly that is going to be off-chain. It's going to involve gamers acquiring assets, skills, experiences to engage in tournaments, win, earn points. And then that description should involve a clear description of how the game treasury works in terms of the money that goes into it from various types of monetization, the money that goes out of it from play to earn, and the money that goes out of it in terms of value sharing to early adopters and early supporters of the project. And having a description of that mechanism that is as sustainable in the long run as possible is going to be key to differentiate your project against other hackathon competitors. Tip number 4, I mentioned it earlier, design goes a long way, especially when we're talking about gaming, metaverse, and NFTs. And so, of course, many of you may have seen like the constructive criticism that accompanied the latest posts by Mark Zuckerberg, and people making fun of the fact that even after spending tens of billions of dollars on metaverse products, the visuals that came out of their metaverse looked like they were drawn by a 12-year-old. And so, when we're talking about metaverse and gaming, of course, we're in the world of visual experiences. Even if we're dealing with pixelated experiences, there needs to be something about the design that makes users want to stay in the universe that you're offering to them. And so, as hackathon participants, I really encourage you to find a way to recruit a designer to be part of your team You can do that in the Discord, or you can do that through your personal network. But having a designer working with you is going to greatly enhance your game for sure, and is likely to impress the judges a great deal. So think about that as a key differentiator. And final tip, so it's about the preparing for the final deliverable. So the point that I was making earlier is that even though it's a hackathon and your core deliverable is the code repository, it's also important to pay attention to the pitch. So in the context of this hackathon, at the end of the hackathon, there will be a submission form where you will be asked to post the links to the GitHub repo, and also to post the link to a video that you will have recorded with your team, which is your pitch. And so, think carefully about how effective your pitch is going to be. Usually, you will start with an introduction to the team. And here, what we're interested in as judges is probably not so much your life story, but it's more like to what extent this team is the best to tackle a particular problem. Right? So please highlight parts of your work or personal experiences that are relevant to the problem or opportunity that you're dealing with, so that we understand that there is depth behind your approach to the problem. Second section of the pitch, so that's a description of the problem or opportunity, followed by, of course, a description of your solution in the way that is as concise as possible, so that the judges who are seeing dozens of pitches are able to quickly grasp what your project is about. Now, of course, you should still make sure that the majority of the time that you spend pitching is dedicated to the demo. So that's why on this slide, the arrow that represents the demo is the biggest one. And it's important to spend some time going through the various pieces of the experience that you have developed. And finally, you may remember that Apple presentations, product presentations, used to and probably still do today, finish with like one more thing. So that's what's called the grand finale. And the idea here is that in order to make your presentation memorable, you want to finish with some kind of with a feature that is surprising, or by presenting an aspect of your project that is fun or unexpected. And I really encourage you to think about that as well. It can be anything. There's no rule really, but it's about, again, thinking about your performance like a show and making sure that it finishes with something that will stick in the minds of the judges. So that's the recap. So 5 tips to keep in mind to win any hackathon, probably any Web3 hackathon, and in particular, this gaming and metaverse hackathon that is organized by Moralis, and where Cronos, Rockex, and Covalent are also participating as judges. And so I really encourage you to take those tips, discuss them with your team, make sure that from the start you're working on the right problem or the right opportunity, and that you're using blockchain in the right way. And then, at the very end, make sure that you save some time as a team to plan your presentation, your pitch, so that it is memorable and easy to understand. So that's it for the presentation. And I don't know, Phil, if there are questions in the chat, but I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Yes, I'm sure we have a couple questions in the chat here. Let's move on to that. Now, I was taking a couple notes while you were presenting as well, Ken, and I just wanted to reinforce, that not everything on chain is maybe more important than people realize when they first start developing. When we're developing for Web3, it's so exciting to build aspects of our games that are on chain, and I get that. But we want to think about, why are we putting it on chain? Is it going to increase security somehow, having that aspect of the game on chain, or is having that metric public an important part of the game? If so, maybe we have a good case for, blockchain utility there. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I do have Spencer from our events team monitoring the chat. Spencer, did we come across any questions that we want to put up on the screen here during the presentation? You can feel free to put some of the good ones up here now. Is building a mini metaverse allowed rather than a Unity game? I think the question is whether or not there needs to be some game utility. I'm going to go ahead and say yes on that, but Ken, if you want to elaborate a little bit.
You mean yes, it's allowed, right? That's what you meant, Phil?
Yes, yeah. So it's important to have game utility to it and not just a game space.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, there is no rule to innovation. So in principle, we're open to everything. But I think there is this story that often people repeat that about Decentraland, right? Which was one of the pioneers in the realm of metaverse. And if you read the press, you could have the impression that everyone was in Decentraland and that it was the place to be. But then when you visited Decentraland, there was oftentimes no one there, and you try. I'm sure you've tried it as well, Phil. But you try and go and talk to people, and their avatar is there, but they're actually not behind their screen, so you're unable to communicate with anyone. So yeah, as a result, I think it's really I think we have experimented with the metaverse already. Now the question that everyone is asking themselves, and the reason why we're organizing this hackathon with you, is like, what are the innovative ways to engage and keep people coming back to those metaverses? And so some game component is probably required for it.
Absolutely. And then I'm on the 100% same page as you, Ken, on that. I think that, what are we doing in this hackathon? We're taking it beyond where we are right now. So open metaverse spaces that are somewhat of a tabula rasa, blank slate, that's been done. And so let's see how we can take that a step further. If you're already working on something like that, please don't get discouraged. I think adding some type of game utility or some sort of objective to the world that you're already producing might be all that it takes. It just depends on, how do you incentivize that in a way that makes sense? And that links back into what we were talking about with tokenomics, and how if money's coming out of your system in any form, it needs to be coming in at least in that amount, because otherwise, where is that revenue coming from? And our modern Web3 gamers are smart to these types of things. They're looking for, where does the DApp generate revenue? Because if I'm going to earn money, it's not coming from nowhere. I'm new. How many players are allowed in a game? That depends a lot on how you build it, but you should think about that when you're building out your experience. If you're going to have an unlimited number of people coming in, how does that affect the game experience, and how does that play into what you're building? Ken, did you have anything else on that?
Yeah, so I spoke to some of the people who were behind like Yuga Games Metaverse, which was demoed a few months ago, and was one of the first metaverses where they managed to host like hundreds of avatars. And from those discussions, what I understand is that it was technically a huge challenge. I mean, it's a huge computing challenge to have more than a few dozen people on the same server. You definitely would not be able to do it in the context of a hackathon. So if we are talking about computing resources that are available to the everyday developer, the game that you're thinking about, probably if you're able to accommodate a dozen users, it's already a major accomplishment. I wouldn't try to aim higher than that.
That plays into something that I was sharing in our hackathon work together right before this stream. Oftentimes we want to think during the course of a hackathon of, what is our minimum viable product and how do we achieve that most completely? So you might have this idea of how your game has 7 different characters, and each of those characters have an option of 3 different weapons, and so on and so forth, to the point that you've really fleshed it all out in your mind and on paper already. You might want to consider not producing that entire game during the course of the hackathon and instead breaking it down into, all right, I'm going to introduce this character with this limited set of functions, but then the experience is complete because you can always add in depth later. What we're going to be looking for in judging is, can we quickly get an idea of what this game does? Is it engaging and does it make sense? Then, those deeper aspects, that can be part of your second, third, or even, fourth iteration potentially. On that note, Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to encourage everybody to reach out in Discord and in GatherTown if you have questions. We have support from the community engineers. Yosef, who I saw in the chat, leads that group. So please reach out to them with any questions you may have. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys at the next Hackathon workshop. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone. Bye.